Over the past sort of decade that I've been involved with graffiti, all the graffiti writers and graffiti artists that I've met all have different reasons for liking graffiti and liking different things about graffiti. But there are undoubtedly some common themes and reasons for people liking graffiti, and although there are 100% no rules surrounding why you should like what you do about graffiti, today we're taking a look at the top 5 best things about graffiti or funnest things about graffiti. So let's get into it. So starting off at number 5, and I'm probably already making a bit of a controversial claim here, feel free to weigh in on this in the comments as well, but I would say the 5th most fun reason to be involved with graffiti is the interaction with other graffiti artists that you get. As a graffiti artist yourself, you get the benefit of interacting with all different kinds of graffiti artists and writers, and everyone you meet in the graffiti world is going to have their own unique philosophy and outlook on the art, and about everything else as well, of course. And I think that's awesome. The more graffiti artists you meet, the more you can learn about different things within graffiti, whether that be different techniques, different artistic concepts, how to tag and get up, or a whole range of other things. And that type of interaction is awesome because it helps you figure out what you think is fun about graffiti, and most importantly, it helps you figure out what you in particular really think is important in graffiti. I made a whole video on that actually, if you want to check it out in the corner. And this is why it's number 5 on the list. Not all interactions with other graffiti artists or writers are pleasant, to say the least. And this goes back to when I said every graffiti writer has their own philosophy and outlook on the art. And that's great, but it can also lead to a lot of disagreements within sort of different sub-communities of graffiti about a range of things. Really, I don't even want to get into it, but that kind of thing just causes a lot of grief for, everyone involved. So the interactions are sort of a double-edged sword, I would say. Hence why I have them just at number 5 on this list. And that's also the reason I sort of always say that I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with the graffiti community in general, if you can argue that a graffiti community exists at all. Because there's so many great things about the high level of variance between graffiti writers in terms of their opinions, their areas of knowledge, even their skill levels. But that same variance is also what produces a lot of the annoyances and the problems between individuals. I'm sure you can all relate. Maybe that's something to let me know about in the comments as well. But number 4 on this list is what I like to refer to as the tech, as in the technology involved in graffiti. This involves the awesome DIY part of making your own graffiti supplies, all the way up to being able to buy and test out those awesome professionally made graffiti mops, chisel tip markers, solid sticks, different spray paints, different caps even, and all of the rest of that fun stuff. Figuring out how to make your own sort of ink or paint formula, figuring out how to adapt your style depending on what implement you are writing with. It's all just good fun, and no one can really argue with that. I would argue it's one of the most wholesome things about graffiti. And another great thing about making your own graffiti supplies is that you can customize them as much as you want. And of course it does save you a lot of money usually if you're doing it right. On the flip side of that, the graffiti product market nowadays is so well developed that you can definitely find some cool writing utensils within it that you'd be glad to try out, and you can have a lot of fun trying out for sure. Definitely some of the mops on the market have become my go-tos that I use regularly, and with such a high number of them out there, you're bound to find one that fits your sort of needs as well. But moving on to number 3 on this list, this is something that generally people don't really talk about too often, but whenever I've brought it up in conversations in the context of good graffiti fun, most of the time people agree. And that is what I like to call the adventure portion of graffiti. To me, the journey to the spot that you're going to paint at, whether that be a hike to a train yard or a bit of a trek in a few abandoned buildings or whatever, it's a great part of graffiti in my opinion. I think there's so much to be said for getting to know the landscape or the city that you live within. After all, many great artists in every genre of art conceivable have all made comments about how your art and the environment it's within sort of work in tandem, and that truth can only be amplified when you're dealing with an art form such as graffiti that most prominently takes place sort of out in the wild. as we say. For the top 2 best, funnest things about graffiti, I know there's gonna be hella disagreement about which one should actually be number 1, and which of these next 2 is actually your favorite thing about graffiti is obviously just gonna come down to personal preference. I'd say for most graffiti writers, one of these next 2 things will be the main draw of graffiti for people, but I could be wrong, and there's nothing wrong with having a different opinion, of course. But I mean, I guess I'll actually let you guys vote in the comments too. Which do you guys think is the single most fun thing about graffiti out of these next 2? Which do you think is more important? But because of that, for the purposes of this video, the next 2 things are sort of going to be tied for the number 1 spot. And with that being said, the first thing tying for the number 1 position is what I personally find to be the most fun part of graffiti, and that is, of course, the actual artistic process and creation process of doing graffiti. Whether it be piecing, doing throw-ups, doing tags, or anything else, actually making graffiti and being involved with the art and in the process is not only what I would say is the most fun thing about graffiti, but probably, at least to me, also the most important thing about graffiti. The best way I can describe it is that you just can't beat the process you go through of creating a piece or a throw-up, even a tag. But the other number 1 thing about doing graffiti, which is tied, is sort of ambiguous, and what I'm just going to sum it up as is the feeling of doing graffiti, or the feelings you get from doing graffiti. Now, of course, that's different for everyone, and ultimately this is going to be described differently by every graffiti writer. Some of the most common ways you hear it is the adrenaline rush that you get when you're out bombing. Others would maybe describe it as the sense of raw accomplishment that you feel when you know how much you've put into graffiti, and probably some others would also chalk it up to just being a feel of satisfaction that you get from years of development and skill creation as a graffiti artist that you've done. After all, it really is a process for improvement. And I have to say, you definitely do get this sort of feeling when you look at how your style has evolved over time and you look at pieces that are several years old up to your newer pieces. You really get a sense of some sort of development when you do that. I'm sure some of you guys can relate. I'm sure you guys can identify with both of the number 1 funnest things about Graff, but I'd love to get your guys' opinions in the comments on which one you think is the singular more important out of those 2. I will definitely read your opinion. I love to interact with everyone in our graffiti community here on the channel. But at the end of the day, graffiti really is like anything else. You gotta do what you like, and that's the same thing within graffiti. Famously, there are no rules to graffiti, so it's important that you sort of use that to make graffiti something that you enjoy for yourself. I have to say that in every video I post, I'm always super happy to see all the different points of view that different graffiti writers and viewers present in the comments. If you find this video interesting, feel free to maybe hit the subscribe button and join the most forward-thinking graffiti community that I have seen for sure. I've got other graffiti top 5 videos that you can check out on screen now, as well as over 300 graffiti-related videos on the channel. I'll hopefully see you over there in one of those. Until then, peace.